Normally it takes me 10 hours to get a pork this size. Freaking cotton. A pork this size. With the 2 techniques I'm going to show you today, it'll be done in 6. And it will look juicy and smoky just like this. Okay, that's actually really good. The fact this was cooked in 6 hours blows my mind. 6-hour pork is all about efficiency. Let's get our grill getting up to temp while we get our pork ready. I like to use the Luftleiter for charcoal grills. It's really quick and efficient when you plug it in. There we go. The pork, the most important part of this whole show. Here's why. We want bone in, 7 pounds, fat cap. Can you even see with all that smoke?
I don't know.
It's getting up to temp, so it's a little smoky. The reason you want bone in, when they go in and cut that bone out and pull it out, the meat just gets cut open like an open heart surgery. You have to go in, get butcher twine, wrap it all back up together. That's more time, more work. We're just gonna skip that, so get bone in. Also, 7 pounds. This is 7.5, doesn't have to be exact, but we did it with 9.5 pounds, and this whole process took an hour and a half longer. So, to keep under that 6-hour mark, 7 pounds. Bone in, 7 pounds. Also, fat cap. Let me show you why. When I'm trimming up the pork, I like to use a latex glove on one hand, or just dedicate one hand to being dirty, and then a clean hand for your knife, salt, and seasoning. So, let's cut into it. I forgot to tell you another important thing I like to do. I like to do this on a cookie sheet. It keeps all the drippings off my cutting board, keeps things nice, easier for cleanup. Now let's keep cutting it open. I like to check if there's just any little extra fat. That'll just be a glob of fat, and just trim that off. But I'm not gonna go too crazy. It is pulled pork. Now let's talk fat cap. In the past, I've always cut this part off because at the end it's just a big glob of fat and it's not very good, and it has all that seasoning on it and you don't really eat it. So back then it took about 10 hours to cook this size pork. So with this method, what we're going to do is go through and score the pork about 1 inch apart with each cut, going about 1/4 inch deep, 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. Rotate, same deal, inch apart. We're gonna make about inch cubes. Why we're doing it this way. The first technique I wanna show you out of the 2 is this. Fat cap scored 300 degrees. Let me dive in. The fat cap, we cut it up because it helps render it quicker. The fat cap makes it so we can put it on a high heat like 300, and it will help render all that fat down into a nice bark. I've done this without the fat cap, and the bark gets so dry and crusty it's hard to even eat. We've also done this on 325 with the fat cap, and it burned and had an acrid flavor. It was disgusting. Straight up disgusting. It was gross. 300. Don't be tempted to go 325. It will burn. Salt. If you have the time, which if you're watching a video on how to cook pork in 6 hours, you're probably like me, bought this the day of and want to cook it for dinner. But if you planned ahead and you were smarter than me, do this step the night before. It's called dry brining. What that's going to do is help the salt penetrate into the meat and give it flavor throughout, just like when you put rock salt on your driveway in the winter. It helps the salt will penetrate deep into the ice and break it apart. It does the same on meat. But if you're in a hurry, it's okay, because in the end when you shred it all up, that salty flavor gets mixed throughout the pulled pork anyways, so don't sweat it. We're going for a good amount of salt here. This is a big hunk of meat. Also, if you're worried about it being too salty, when you pull it at the end, you can top it with some salt, and it brings out that flavor. So if you are worried, you can go a little bit lighter on the salt. The barbecue gods won't be too mad. I'm kidding. Wife didn't like that joke very much.
Oh, I did.
We've got it salted. For the seasoning, I like to mix it in a mason jar. It makes it easy for mixing. Boom, done. Also, I like the mason jar because it's airtight. I've used like some of the sprinkle ones, and with the brown sugar that's in here, it starts to clump and doesn't come out, and it's kind of a mess. So this keeps it airtight, keeps it nice and flowy. Some people like to put mustard or other binders on here, and you can do that, fine with that. I've just noticed it sticks just fine as it is. So your choice there. I'm going without. Get a nice layer. And some of this seasoning that falls off, you can pick up the chunk and actually dip it in there and save it. And look at that. Boom! To get some of the sides that might be like a little under, instead of flipping it up, you can just throw it on your hand and it will bounce on there. That's an easy way to get the sides. Our smoker is up to temp. Here's what I like to do on my charcoal smoker. That's kind of where the hot spot is. I pull these back to where there's the air vent, throw my wood chunks in there, scrape it back over top. Charcoal will also heat up and help kind of burn off some of that smoke. Now we'll put the pork on, fat cap down. Normally, I like to spray or spritz with a combination of water and vinegar. What that does is smoke adheres to things that are wet and cold. So it'll give it more of a smoky flavor. But since we're trying to get this done in 6 hours, we're gonna not do this today because that's gonna help the bark set up even quicker. So skipping on the spritzing. The fingernail test. This is something I like to do to check if the pork is ready to be wrapped. What you do is you want to scratch and see if that bark is set and it's kind of crumbling off. Okay, see how that bark, or see how the seasoning's coming off? That means it's not ready. Okay, let's check on our pork. As you can see, it's been super windy. It's caused a lot of temperature fluctuations. So let's see how we're doing. Get in close. Take a look at this bark. We've got a good bark set. So we've done the fingernail test. We're not getting a bunch coming off. This is pretty set. So we're looking good here. Okay, our second technique, a nice hot Dutch oven. We've had this preheating for the last hour on 300 degrees. That way we can transfer our pork into here, and instead of foiling it, which I usually do, doing it in the Dutch oven, I've noticed it cooks it a lot quicker, and it's probably because of all this hot mass that's really close to it. It retains that heat more than foil will. It cooks through that stall point a lot quicker. So, what we're gonna do is take our pork and put it in here. And then I like to add a little bit of liquid to help it braise. This is about 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup of a mixture of just barbecue sauce and water. You want it to be pretty runny. So go ahead and just pour that in. Let's get this thing back on the smoker. Or you can put this in your oven on 300. Doesn't matter because it's not going to get any smokier. Pork's been going just over 6 hours. Let's check in on it. What we're checking for is that it goes in like butter. You want it to just stick in and go right through, just like that. Also, we want to look for an internal temp of around 200. This was at 202. I'll be completely honest. We took this out to do a thumbnail, so it's dropped in temp. So we're looking for little over 200. Mostly, it should go in like butter. You want to go ahead and let this cool down for a minute and then put it in a big bowl and we'll shred it. We've got our pork in a large bowl to mix it up. We've already pulled the bone out. It fell right out. So now what we're going to do is shred the pork up, and this is just falling apart. So we're just going to go through, and I like to use latex gloves and some other thicker rubber gloves underneath so my hands don't get all burned. But as you can see, it's just falling apart. 6 hours, this stuff's falling apart. Might I say, I can't wait. The smokiness and juiciness is it's just right there. It's perfect. You want to give it a taste and see what might need to be added. So, you have a few options. One of which I don't have with me right now. It's inside. few options for what you can add. You can add a bit of salt. You can add a bit more rub. You can even add some barbecue sauce. Sometimes I like to cut it in with some apple cider vinegar, which is right there. I forgot as well. Come to me, apple cider vinegar, one of my favorites. The juices that we captured here in the Dutch oven. So I like to start by adding maybe half and then give it a good mix. And then give it another taste. Oh, that is a ton of flavor. I'm not gonna add the rest. So the flavor's there. I feel like it needs just a bit more salt. It's not too salty, it's just got a lot of that pork flavor. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of salt, mix it up. What's also great about adding the drippings back in is it's the fat from the pork, so it's gonna coat this meat that's very moist, and it's gonna prevent it from drying out as fast. If we just left it as is, it would dry out a bit faster. So let's try it now. And that is spot on. Now that we've got our pork dialed in, I recommend you eat it just like this. Try it like this first before you start throwing it on a sandwich with bread and sauce and all that other stuff. Eat it like this, because then you'll learn how you want to change it to your taste buds. Maybe you want more seasoning. Maybe you want more salt. Maybe you want more smoke. That's how you're going to learn how you want to contour your process to get the pork you want. But if you throw all that stuff on right away, you're not going to get it. So do that. When you are ready for a sandwich, I've got a great video. I'll link it in the description or have it pop up somewhere on the screen for my favorite pulled pork sandwich. That really is freaking good.